What is your most irrational fear?
Death.
That's fair. That's real.
Yeah, I've always been terrified of the idea of death. I contemplated death from a young age. Like, I think I remember the first time, like, really sitting down and grasping with the idea of my parents and myself no longer existing when I was, like, 8, like 7 or 8. It, like, really hit me. And I had, like, I didn't have the words to describe it back then, but I had, like, existential crises about that. And I think I still struggle with that. So, and it is irrational because the inescapable fact of life is that everybody dies, and like death is a part of life, and it's hard. It's taken me a lifetime to try and wrestle with that and be better about, more graceful about handling that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know. I want to say I hope it's quick for you.
Thank you. Thanks, babe. Hopefully you'll be there. I don't. I plan on going first. So
I want to
you'll be
say
there.
I hope it's quick, but like I want you to be able to embrace death when it's coming, and I don't want you to be so caught by surprise that you like can't accept it.
Huh. Yeah, like you want me to be like freaking Castor, ready for the big ride, baby? Like just singing like a tune on my way out. Like,
Yeah.
I hope I can get there. I hope I can get there.
If you could solve one problem, what would it be?
Loneliness.
Oh.
I think loneliness is a cancer. I think loneliness leads to so many other problems. It resonates with me when people are like, addiction is not a disorder of like physiology, it's a disorder of sociology. Like, you become an addict because you are separated from people socially. You're lonely, and you retreat into substance abuse to escape from your own loneliness and isolation. And I was very much like that, and I think a lot of addicts are like that. And I think that leads to homelessness, and I think that leads to hopelessness, and I think that leads to suicide and homicide and every incel mass shooter. Loneliness is a cancer, and humans are social creatures in that we need to be social. Like, we engage with social interaction with each other for no other benefit than to engage in social interaction with each other. Like, that's a very unique thing for humans, is that we need one another. If you take a baby and you don't hug it, you ruin that baby because you didn't do this. Like, that's how much we need connection as humans. And if you take that away, you have despair and you have darkness. So I would take away loneliness if I could.
Wow.
I don't think anybody should ever feel alone like that.
That's beautiful.
I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like, to feel like you're all alone in the world and nobody would care if you lived or died. It's the worst feeling in the world. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Oh. I'd be curious to know what you think of AI companions, because that's become a prevalent thing in the modern age.
I think it can help at the margins, but I think it's also bad for humans to outsource interaction to machines. I don't think that machines can ever quite attain, at least not in our lifetime, the amount of humanity to help us feel connected. They can definitely help talk through problems. They can be therapists, and I think that's great. There's a lot of great impact there. But I don't think it can replace people, and I don't think we should try. It's not healthy. I don't think that's healthy to try to replace human connection with machine connection. It's not, it won't work. I don't think so. Personally.
What's your most guilty pleasure?
That's a good question. Probably one of my guiltiest pleasures is feeling more informed or smarter than someone else, because I had an inferiority complex most of my life. And I'm not saying that I enjoy that aspect of myself, but I try to be well read and well informed so that I can be a source of information and help for others and a source of admiration. And I feel like that's a bit of a that's my pride and my ego from having been somebody that nobody looked up to and nobody went to for advice my whole life, or most of my life. I get a lot of pleasure and sometimes guilty pleasure out of people needing me. I want to be needed.
That's cool.
If I'm being raw and honest.
Yeah.
I feel a little uncomfortable divulging it, to be honest, so I guess it hits the nail.
I appreciate your honesty, my love.
And you're going to be like, chocolate! And I'm going to be like, fuck! I could give this, like, deep insight, and you're just like, I fart sometimes. I'm just like...
Do you wish that you had been raised differently?
I really appreciate how I was raised.
Yeah.
I was raised by immigrants, who moved here all from Germany. And being an immigrant family in another country, trying to put legs under yourself and build a foundation in a new world is very hard on families.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of expectations.
Yeah.
And this idea of unconditional love is really not something that is very pervasive in immigrant households. Love is there, but it's very much you need to prove yourself, you need to show that you belong, you need to work hard, you need to be successful, and that's just drilled into your head from day one. Success, success, success. And I appreciate that. I really do. I think it's led to a lot of wonderful things in my life. But if I had to, I wish that I had been raised with a little more gentleness and a little more acceptance that it's okay to struggle and that you're not lesser than because you're having a harder time than others. Like, everybody's different. Everybody learns at their own pace, and it's okay. I wish I had a little more of that grace. And I love my parents, and they did a great job. This is not like mommy and daddy didn't do this, that, or the other. In a perfect world, I wish I had more of that in my life. Because you had a lot of that. Even though you didn't grow up with as much financially as I did, you grew up with a lot of love and a lot of acceptance and a lot of unconditional love that I really didn't experience.
I know. Totally unconditional love. I was basically worshipped my whole life.
Yeah, you were like literally the way she described it to me, which blew my mind. She was like, I just felt like I could do no wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, imagine any immigrant family or person who was raised in an immigrant family who watches this will laugh at that, where it's like, you can do no wrong? Like, what does that feel like? Like, who would I be if I had that kind of encouragement? In an immigrant house, they give you a litany of all the things that you can do wrong. Like, it's the antithesis. It's like, here's all the ways you can ruin your life. And ours, too.
I know. I joke with my colleagues sometimes because I'll tell them, it's like, I told my mom I want to be a nurse, and she was like, don't.
Yeah, please don't.
She was like, don't do it. Be an artist. Just
do
something you love.
Go to fish shows.
Yeah.
Live in a VW van. Like, it's like so crazy.
I know.
Totally.
It was a beautiful upbringing.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely I feel like I was raised kind of by tiger parents.
Yeah.
Like, Germans are kind of like the Japanese of Europe. Like, they're very much that tiger, 1, 2, 3, like, you need to perform well in school. And it's very much, you have to be academically and monetarily successful.
Yeah.
And if you want to, what you want to do and what you find joy in, that's great. But what does that have to do with life? Like, that's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, I'm not happy. What does your happiness have to do with it? Like, who's talking about happiness? We're talking about building a life.
I know.
And it's very much, it changes you.
Yeah, that's like the antithesis of the hippie
hippie.
mindset that I was used to.
Yeah, you were raised by hippies. I was raised by A-types. You know what I mean?
Could not be more different.
Couldn't be more different.
Have you had any recurring dreams?
Yeah, my grandfather.
Oh.
Yeah, I see my grandfather, my father's father, I was close with, and he passed away and had a stroke in the early 2000s, but then passed away like 10 years after that. But I have this recurring dream where I keep seeing him, and I keep being able to talk to him, and it's always really emotional, and I'm always really sorry that I didn't get to say more while he was here or hear more. And
You were so young.
but I still regret it. I still regret it. And I miss him very much.
So you have a dream that he's in?
I have a dream that I'm hanging out with my family somewhere. Like it's usually something relatively casual, like a dinner. You know, it's like we would just do on any other day of the week. But then I turn around and he's there, and it's always such a surprise to me. And he was debilitated after his stroke, so he couldn't really speak well, and he was like wheelchair bound. And this is a guy who survived World War II. You know, and to see him brought low like that was so hard. So hard. And in my dream, he's not like that. In my dream, it's like I remember him, you know, being able-bodied and healthy. And it's wonderful.
Does he say anything in your dream? He's just there.
No, I always I don't think he ever gets a chance to get a word in edgewise because I'm so happy to see him. And I'm just telling him all the things that I regret and how much I missed him and everything. And he usually just smiles at me. The most warm, wonderful smile. Like a sage. Like somebody who really just gets it and understands. And, yeah. Sorry.
No.
Getting all verklempt.
That's beautiful. Babe, you know that he knows how much you love him and how highly you think of him and how much you respect him. He knows that.
I hope so. You know, he was really special. He wasn't, I don't even know if he really knew how much he meant to me. Like, I don't know if I ever got a chance to really tell him, like, how much I loved him and how much he really meant to me.
Aww.
Yeah, I regret that. And I always looked up to him. You know, he was such a larger than life guy. You know, went to war and then after the war had the successful business. And like one of my favorite things about him, my memory, is that he did a lot of construction projects, and he did a lot of construction in the Middle East in the 70s and stuff for a lot of countries there. And one country was so grateful for everything that he had done, they put him on a stamp with like their president. And I remember they showed me that, and it's a picture of him and my grandfather and this president at the top of these stairs with a private jet, you know, back in the 70s, right? Baller as hell.
That is baller.
And there's my grandfather in like a buttoned up like white cotton shirt and just these like crazy awesome like stunner aviators from the 70s, like those big 70s glasses, and he just looks like such a baller with like this president of some, you know, Middle Eastern, maybe the Emirates or something, I don't know. Spoke 3 languages, you know, was very smart with business, and like he was just a really awesome, well-rounded human. And I just regret that I didn't have more time with him.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We all wish we had more time.
Time is the real commodity, guys. Time, it's not money. Time is the real commodity. That's the real precious resource. What about you?
Well, I don't know how to follow that.
Oh no!
My recurring dream.
Please let it be fun. Like I'm all like verklempt now.
I know. I love you so much. My recurring dream are that robots have taken over the world.
Nice.
What was your first impression of me, and how has that changed since you've gotten to know me over the years?
Uh-oh, this sounds like a trap.
What was your first impression, babe?
My first impression of you, I thought you were so hot. And then I read about you, and I was struck by your eloquence and your soul. Like, you wrote this whole expose about yourself, and you were very unreserved about sharing so much about yourself, and I just found it to be beautiful and stunning. I thought you were stunning, to be honest. And I thought I didn't really have much of a chance, but I thought I'd throw my name in the hat and see what happens. And how did that change? Honestly, I've only improved my outlook of you. I really think you've only evolved beautifully over the years. You know, sometimes when she talks about her looks and how she wants to get some work done or something because she doesn't feel like she's as beautiful as she was, it drives me nuts because I think you're more beautiful than ever, and I think you only get more beautiful. So obviously it's not always wall-to-wall rainbows and butterflies. Sometimes you upset me or vice versa, you know, and I may not be the biggest fan of you in a given moment, but that doesn't mean that I don't overall holistically think the world of you.
Aw,
So yeah.
thank you.
What about me?
When I first met you, I thought that you were a nerd. You know?
A nerd?
Because you had, kind of like unbuttoned dress shirts and glasses and peacoats and, and you were very articulate, very well spoken. You had kind of like a pretty corporate job as far as I was concerned. He's like a smart
He's a
guy.
yuppie. He's a yuppie nerd.
I mean, you gotta remember, you also love fantasy.
I do.
You know,
I do.
you
Yeah,
love
I'm a big gamer.
You
like
love
a big
immersing
RPG.
yourself, right?
Yeah, I'm a big like RPG fan, like Mass Effect and Dragon Age and World of
Star
Warcraft,
Wars.
Star Wars. Like I'm not afraid to show my nerd side either. So she's valid in that idea.
But you are also kind of a soldier. You're a Praetorian?
Yeah, I have that duality, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that you understand that. I am.
Yeah, I think you're a deeply nuanced, complex person in like all
Thanks, babe.
the most beautiful ways. I think you're a very well-rounded person. I think, I love that you pride yourself on being fit and healthy and strong and brave. And I also I do kind of see you as like an Anakin Skywalker a little bit.
That actually is a huge compliment, because like I've always identified the most with Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars, and that I've always felt like I have that potential to be either.
Right.
I have the potential to be a good man and like a great general and soldier and noble hero, but then I also have a side of me that I'm not afraid to say is very, very angry and very afraid. That resonates with me when Yoda tells Anakin, like, I sense your power, but I also sense much fear in you, and fear leads to the dark side. And that's me. Like, I've always had fear and rage, just rage and anger.
Interesting that you and your brother both, I feel, inherited that anger.
Anger is a very deep, ancient demon in my family. And I think a lot of men grapple with anger, but that's something I think particularly in my family's bloodline. My family has always been really upstanding and very well put together and very dignified, but I think we've always had this underlying river of anger and rage, and I don't know what that comes from, but it feels ancient. It feels like it's been there long before any of us were alive. Like it's just something that's in our blood.
Interesting.
Yeah, and my whole life is like me trying to overcome that base nature and like not give into that and not give into that fear.
I'm really proud of you for your the way you've done that in your life and the way you've tackled that and the way you carry yourself. And I know that, there was a period of time after we, had some struggles that you were very angry.
So angry.
But you still have such a good moral compass and such a good code, and you have never acted on any anger.
Thanks, babe. I've tried not to, because I don't want to be Darth Vader. I don't want to give in, because I guess for too many years I gave into that feeling, and feeling like if I just lean into it, maybe I'll exhaust it, but there is no exhausting it. It's just like an endless just whirlwind of rage and fear and indignity and wrath, and it's a trap.
What is something that you feel is missing from your life?
Community.
Okay. Yeah.
Community. I think that's something that honestly millennials are still figuring out. We are the generation that's in the driver's seat. Like the boomers are fading. And the boomers, I think, had community figured out. They're like, it's your friendships, it's your religion, it's your church, it's your school district, it's like your community, right? Your immediate
Your neighbors.
Your neighbors, exactly.
They were big on neighbors.
But millennials we move so much, and things are so fluid and dynamic, and we don't particularly sign on to religion, or at least not yet. So I think that millennials have a harder time finding their community squares, their community spaces to engage with each other more. I feel like that's one thing that I feel is missing, and I think millennials and young people in general, Gen Z and beyond, struggle with that. You know, where do I belong? Where do I feel that sense of belonging and community if I can't find it in church or work or wherever, school?
I think we'll find it. I think we'll get there.
That's why I'm like hesitant to be all doom and gloom about it. I think it's like the old world, we're in an interregnum socially as a society. Like, the boomers are dying off, but they haven't died off yet. And the old has not yet fully faded away. And the millennials are growing and taking their place, but we haven't fully arrived yet. And we're still figuring it out. So, like, the old is dying off, but the new has not yet fully been discovered and born yet. So we have this weird intermediary period where we're feeling awkward, where it's like, well, the old ways don't seem to be working for us, but we don't have an alternative yet. And I think we'll get there, but I think that's where we are now. Like, 10 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if millennials feel more. Once we get honestly, it'll be a home ownership. Like, once you get a home and you get property and you put down roots in a neighborhood, that's something that the boomers had and I think took for granted that millennials and beyond have not. Is that you had a home that, like everything else, I have this property. It's not guaranteed anymore. Like, it was never guaranteed, but you had a much higher likelihood of having it 30 years ago or 40 years ago than now. So I feel like that's one bad outcome of that, is people don't feel community because they don't have roots, because it's too expensive to have roots. And we got to fix that.
We do. I think we should put you in charge.
Thanks, Ben. I don't have any answers other than get rid of zoning and NIMBYism, but like NIMBYism is so powerful. I will say this, zoning laws were built by racists. Like, the first zoning laws were built in Berkeley, California, in this state to keep the Chinese out of Berkeley. And you can look it up. You can look it up if you don't like that. You can look it up. It was about 120 years ago, but that's how zoning laws started, and that's one of the major reasons why we have homelessness everywhere. And no matter how many billions we spend on it, it doesn't get better because you're not building houses.
If today was your last day to live and your life suddenly flashed before your eyes, would you be proud and satisfied with how you live?
Yes. I feel like I did the best with the hand that I was given. You know, I feel like that's one thing that I can be okay with. I feel like I played my cards the best I could. And maybe someone with my same cards would have done better or differently, but I feel like I found the love of my life. I had beautiful children. I've built a career. I've learned so much about the world and the universe and still have more to learn. I've experienced so much. I have more to, like, I just feel like I would be at peace with that as much as I could. I think I would be more upset that I didn't have more time just to live and experience more, rather than being like, well, I wish I had done this, that, or the other. It's more like, I just wish I had more time in general. You know what I mean? I don't really like regret. I don't like regret. Even the stuff where I've like cringed and done the worst shit, I'm still like, that was essential for me to be who I am. So like, even when I was bullied relentlessly and like beaten up every day for years, it was insane. In retrospect, at the time, of course, I fucking hated it and it nearly killed me. But in retrospect, I understand that it served to create the person that I am, and I'm proud of who I am. So, yeah. Not much in the way of regret. I've always wanted to be good at pinball too, and I'm terrible at it. I'm terrible at it. It's two buttons. So you feel like I could figure that out. Like, I'm so bad at it. Like, I just can't.
I know, it's the timing.
The goddamn
flapper,
the flappy doodles. I just can't do it.
That's true. That's one thing that's gotten us through every dark time, is we never stop talking.
Yeah, even when we're really mad, I always use this great metaphor that, like, at the height of the Cold War, you know, the Soviet Union and the United States hated each other like mortal enemies. And yet, even through all of the drama, they always had a direct phone line that they maintained between the Kremlin and the White House. So it's like even mortal enemies had the ability to pick up the phone and talk to each other because they understood that communication, even against your hated enemy, is essential and better than silence. Silence is where you get nuclear war. You know what I mean? Like, that's where you get really bad stuff. And that's where problems fester. You need to bring them into the light, even if they're super uncomfortable.